Hello, pilots. And on today's episode, we continue our series on the citation CJ4 from working titles. In episode 1, we got ourselves up to the runway with the cold and dark start. And now here for episode number 2, we are going to get ourselves up off the ground, off the runway, and get all the way up to cruising level here in the airplane. I'm Coaster Royalty. This is Royal Simulations, and you're watching Flight Sim for Dummies. And now we are back for part number 2. Welcome back in the cockpit. Once again, I'm Coaster Royalty, your instructor for this flight. And in our last video, we got this citation CJ4 from working titles all started up from cold and dark. And we've taxied out to the hold short lines at the Abraham Lincoln Airport here. And we are holding short of runway 22. And there's some things that we need to do before we actually take off. Now, obviously, you would be doing this on your taxi out. You and your co-pilot, if you had one, would be working on these things as we would be progressing towards the taxi and towards the runway. But for now, we're going to stop here at the hold short lines, and we're going to do this here together. Let's go ahead and get started with part number 2 tutorial as we begin to take off and do the takeoff procedure, the before takeoff procedure, takeoff, and then we'll get into cruise before we wrap up this episode here today. All right, so we need to come back down to the area, the center console area that we worked on in episode number 1, if you remember. And now we have the taxi lights on up here at the top. We want to go ahead and take the taxi lights off, and we're going to put the landing lights on. You'll notice also that the strobes have already been turned on because I like to do that before I hit the taxiway, but some pilots like to do that when they get to the hold short lines. So everything right here looks good. You'll notice that the flaps are good. So if you did your checklist, everything here in the center console looks good. We come back up here to the PFD and the MFD. We can see that everything looks good from what we put into there yesterday. And also you can see here we've got the flight level 320. We're going up to flight level 320, which means for this short flight, we're going to have to go up with a vertical speed of a pretty, high rate. So we'll explain what that means here in just a second. And so if we take a look, everything looks good. And with that being said, let's head out onto the runway and let's get this bird up in the air. Get yourself all lined up here with the center line. You can use the engine left fire button there at the top of your dashboard and go ahead and get yourself ready to go and hit that parking brake. From here, we're going to take a break. Now, normally if you were on the network and ATC told you that you are cleared for takeoff, you need to have all these things done before you actually take off. But we're going to make sure of a couple things here real quick, and that we're going to be doing that by going back to the center dashboard here, and we're going to talk about what we're going to do when we actually take off from the runway. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is turn on the autopilot after we bring the gear up. All right, so obviously once you've got a positive rate of climb, you're going to want to put your gear up. If you don't have a gear bound to your keyboard or to your throttle or to your yoke, the gear obviously is right here in between. You can see the 3 gear buttons right now that are green. Obviously when you take off and you start turning them up, they'll turn red until they are completely up, so that way you know that they are correct and in the right place. Once that has happened, and once we get above around 1,500 feet, at that point in time, I like to hit the autopilot button. From there, I automatically hit the yaw damper button, which is right beside it. And then also from there, I like to click the nav button. Remember we talked about in episode number 1 that over here in the PFD, you've got the FMS1, the pink. That means that we are in LNAV mode. And to make sure that we start heading towards that arrow that's pink, we want to make sure to hit the nav button. From there, you have 2 options. You can hit the flight level change button and then use the speed to continue the same speed, and the plane will automatically pitch up and down to keep that speed. Or if you have to get up or down very quickly and you need to do it manually, what I like to do in this plane is use the vertical speed button. And that's the VS button here that you see. And then you can use the down and the up arrows. Obviously, we're going to want to go up as we're taking off. So we're going to go up. And I'm actually going to go at about 3,500 feet per minute. That should give me the right pitch that I want to be able to hold the speed that I need here for takeoff. So those are the things that you will need. And I will kind of say those again and show you how I do those as we take off. And so without further ado, we've been cleared for takeoff here from the Abraham Lincoln Airport, and let's get started with our flight. What I like to do is just give a little bit of speed into the throttles. We're going to go ahead and turn that parking brake off. And we're going to start moving and just gently ease the throttles forward until you get to around 97. There's what I like to do with the throttles. And that looks good right there. 97 is what we're going to have. And there is 60 knots. There's 70 knots. There's 80 knots. The airspeed is alive. Make sure you hold that on the center line. And there's the V1 speed. And we're going to rotate, pull back on that yoke or stick that you have. And we have positive. You can hear the ATC in the background. I forgot to turn that off, so I apologize. But we have positive rates, so gear is going to go up. Sorry about that. Make sure to turn. Oh, well, we've got that stupid audio, and I apologize, everyone. You're just going to have to deal with it. I can't turn it off right now. All right, so there we go, just around 1,500 feet. We'll hit that autopilot button, yaw damper, then we're going to hit the nav button, and then I'm going to go vertical speed. And with that, we're going to go up to 3,500 feet per minute. You can see that the plane automatically is going to pitch to go. There we go. And we are up and out. So you'll notice now that we are pitching at a 3,500 feet. So if we go outside and take a look at the aircraft, you can see how it is pitching at about 3,500 feet. It's going to be a pretty good pitch. But remember, this is a pretty quick airplane. It can get up in the air very quickly as well. And just like that, guys, we are pitching up at 3,500 feet. As you guys can see here, there's the 3,500 feet per minute. We are already at 6,900 at 7,000 feet. We're going to show you what to do once we get up to 10,000 feet. We'll be back with you once we hit the 10,000 feet, and I'll pause it and show you what to do next. And as you can see, we are now up to 14,000 feet. And normally you do this at 10,000, but I was kind of in the middle of doing something and kind of forgot what I was doing. So anytime above 10,000, you're going to want to come back down to your center console. And in your center console, you'll want to go ahead and turn your landing lights off. Now that you're above 10,000 feet, you don't need those on anymore. And from there, we can go back and take a view outside. See that we are still pitching up. Our next step will be to go to standard barometer at 18,000, so you can see that we are almost there. Now, for those of you who fly in other countries and here not in the United States, remember that the transition altitude is different for all places of the world. But everywhere in North America, we do use 18,000. And so there is the 18,000 mark. And so from there, we're going to want to come right here to this knob that says Baro. and it says push and standard. So we're going to want to go ahead and click on that, and you'll notice that down below it has now gone to 29.92 standard. We'll be back here in just a minute as we get to cruise, and I'll tell you what you can do during your cruise, kind of part of your flight, and then we'll wrap up this episode and get ready for episode number 3. And now as we get ready to hit our cruising altitude of flight level 320, right now we are at flight level 307. A couple things to keep in mind as we get ready for cruise. Remember that the CJ4 does not have auto throttle, so you will have to mind your throttles, making sure that you don't go into overspeed. There's the altitude you're 1,000 feet away from, so the CJ4 does warn you when you are nearing your altitude. And that's so obviously to get ready for your cruising kind of checklist and the things that you'll need to do once you get to this point of your flight. Now, because this is a very quick descent and we're going to be really only up in the cruising altitude for just a few minutes, there are a few things that you want to go ahead and get ready for. Obviously, the first is making sure you know what runway you're going to be going at once you get to the arrival airport. So you'll need to do that. You'll need to find the ATIS, and I'll show you how to do that when we look at the charts in episode number 3. But once you've figured out how to get your ATIS and knowing what airport you've done, and here we are, guys, at our cruising altitude of flight level 320 now. What I like to do once we get to flight level 320 is first and foremost, I like to get this plane set up into VNAV. Remember, this does have working VNAV, so as our plane starts to speed up and get to the speed that it's going to cruise at, what I like to do is go back here to the center dashboard once again. And what you want to do is go to your altitude selector, and you want to make sure that that goes down to whatever the chart says that you need to be at. So what I want to do is I want to bring up the chart for you guys. And if you would with me here, you can see that if we take a look at our arrival charts, we need to be at Jackbow at 3,000. But to hit the ILS, or in this case, because we're going to be doing an RNAV approach, we're going to be hitting that at 2,300 feet. And so since I know that we're going to be hitting it at 2,300 feet, what we want to make sure that we can do is in our altitude selector button here, we want to make sure to go all the way down to 2,300. And I'll show you why we want to do that. And there's the 2,300. And once you've gotten that number in there, you're going to click on the VNAV button. So go ahead and click that. You'll notice that over here in your PFD now, it says VALT, vertical altitude, and then you've got this white path. When that white path becomes armed and turns green, we're going to be on the VNAV. And what's great is this plane tells you when that top of descent will be. So up here, where this little button is, you can actually rotate it to the right, just one click, and you'll notice that our top of descent circle, which is located right here, is about 12.5 miles out. When we hit that green button, that plane is going to automatically start its descent down to the arrival runway. That's just what's so awesome about this plane. So we'll come back right before we hit that top of descent in just a couple minutes. So now you have the plane started, you've taken off from the runway, and you've reached cruise level. You're halfway home to your first flight in the CJ4. In episode 3, which will be our final episode, we're going to be going through our descent phase, the approach phase, and the landing phase, which is all very, very simple with the CJ4. If you like what you're seeing and you want to see more content here on the channel, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and turn on that notification bell to make sure you know when all of our videos go live here on Royal Simulations. For Royal Simulations, I'm Coaster Royalty. Until next time, we hope you have happy skies and happy flying, and so long.